I returned from a grueling deployment to find my 7-year-old son chained in a rat-infested cellar, skin ripped by sharp claws and covered in blood. "Daddy," he wept, "Mom's new boyfriend locked me here, forced me to drink rat poison from a rusty bucket." I took him to safety and made one call. That night, medics found the boyfriend slaughtered in his basement, and my wife called me, screaming in horror. The sound of her voice was like a banshee ripping through the night, frantic and disbelieving. She hadn't expected me to come home early. She hadn't expected me to still have friends who answered the phone with silence, but moved faster than death itself. She hadn't expected me, after months of sand and blood overseas, to walk through my own door with the steady fury of a man who had buried too many brothers to ever forgive betrayal at home. Her words were broken. "What did you do? My God, what did you do?" I didn't answer. I was sitting in the hospital room beside my son, watching his chest rise and fall under the hiss of an oxygen mask. His small fingers clutched my sleeve even in sleep, as though he feared the moment he let go, I'd vanish again. He smelled of antiseptic now, but underneath lingered the metallic stench of poison, filth, and cruelty. I brushed a strand of hair from his forehead and whispered, "It's over, buddy. No one will ever hurt you again." The truth was, it wasn't over. Not yet. When the medics arrived earlier that night, they had found the boyfriend's body carved open in ways that suggested rage and precision had shared the blade. The news spread quickly. Neighbors whispered, police sirens wailed, and my wife's alibi crumbled like ash. She called again, this time her voice shrill with a mix of guilt and fear. "You can't do this to me! You'll ruin everything!" I finally spoke. My voice was low, steady, each word carrying the weight of battlefields and graves. "You ruined it yourself, the moment you let him touch our boy. You made your choice. Now you'll live with it." There was silence on the other end, then a shuddering sob. I hung up. The next morning, detectives came by the hospital. They asked questions, polite but sharp, like men circling a story that didn't quite fit. They wanted to know where I'd been, how I found my son, why the boyfriend's body looked like he'd been hunted rather than killed. I gave them what they needed, a soldier's alibi, vague details, the blank stare of a man used to tragedy. They wrote notes, exchanged glances, and finally left with more questions than answers. They weren't prepared to pursue a ghost, and I had always been one. Days passed. My son healed slowly, though nightmares clung to him. Some nights he woke screaming about the cellar, about the rats that bit at his feet, about the poison burning his stomach. I held him through every sob, my own rage quiet but alive, like an ember that never died. My wife tried to see him once. She arrived at the hospital with trembling hands and hollow eyes, but I stood in the doorway, blocking her path. "You don't get near him again," I told her. "He's my son too," she whispered. "No," I said. "You forfeited that when you chose a monster over your own blood." She tried to push past me, but the nurse called security, and she was escorted out screaming my name. My boy never even stirred in his sleep. By the time he was released, we had a new home waiting, quiet, away from the noise, away from the shadows of betrayal. I set up cameras, reinforced doors, every precaution a man like me could design. But most importantly, I gave my son something he had never had before, the promise of safety without condition. We planted a small tree in the backyard, and I told him, "Every time you feel scared, you come out here and remember that this tree grows because you survived. No storm can take that away." He nodded solemnly, as though the weight of the world had already pressed him into someone older than his years. But safety is never permanent. The world has a way of circling back. One evening, weeks later, I received an unmarked envelope at the doorstep. Inside was a single photograph. My son walking home from school, his backpack slung over one shoulder. Scrawled beneath in red ink, "You took one of ours. We'll take him." I burned the photo immediately, but the message was clear. The boyfriend hadn't been acting alone. He was part of something larger, something darker, and by removing him, I had declared war. My son deserved peace, but peace was a luxury built on the bones of war. I knew what had to be done. That night, I opened a long-forgotten case hidden beneath the floorboards. Inside lay the tools of a past I had sworn never to revisit. A silenced rifle, a combat knife, encrypted phones with numbers I hadn't dialed in years. My reflection in the metal looked older, scarred, but no less dangerous. I tucked my son into bed, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "Sleep, buddy. Daddy has one more job to finish."